In 2023, I read many transformational books like Atomic Habits and It Takes What It Takes, but none compare to The Same as Ever. In this book, every chapter can be listened to independently, and today I'm going to explain to you a little bit about Chapter 1. Chapter 1 discusses about the topic of how everything hangs on a thread. If you know where we've been, you realize that you have no idea where we're going. And today we're going to break down what this means, how it impacts our world, and why we need to think differently about Bitcoin. This could be one of the most impactful videos and video series that you listen to begin 2024. So I'm going to dive in and begin to share this with you. The world's biggest and most consequential changes happen because of unforeseen circumstances. Random and unforeseeable decisions change the fabric of how the world operates, and we're going to discuss one of those. The Battle of Long Island, August 28th, 1776. George Washington was getting crushed by the British. They had 400 ships ready to come through the waterway, and due to wind changing the way in which it blew, it made it impossible for the ships to take over. This gave George Washington time to escape and to fortify. This was key in the American Revolution. Had this not happened, and Washington and his troops had been taken over by all of that ship and force, America may not be here today. The irony of history is we know how the story ends. We never really know how it begins. Let's paint through an example. What started the 2008 crisis? Well, first you need to understand the 2008 mortgage crisis. Then you need to understand the 30-year decline in interest rates. And to understand that, you need to understand how inflation impacted the 1970s. Then you need to understand the monetary system of the 1970s and the Vietnam War. That leads you to understand, well, what caused the Vietnam War? And then you need to understand, well, why did the West fear communism after World War II? All of these things impacted each other. Every event in the world that happens has a parent, a grandparent, children, and cousins. All of these little events make an impact to create the future that we live in now. Ignoring these truths actually muddy your ability to make decisions. Why do certain things happen? Why do they last? Why do new technologies come into place? Viewing an event in isolation isn't very wise. You need to understand the root as to why things happened, what came beforehand. Why do certain technologies or things last? These things matter because at the end of the day, events compound in unfathomable ways. We will never know what's going to happen in 50 years, but there are certain things that we do know. People respond to greed, fear, opportunity, and exploitation. We care about risk. We get concerned about uncertainty. People are tribally affiliated, and social persuasion plays a major role in how things unfold. Forecasting is challenging. Let's go through an example from the book, because it's easy to skip and just say, okay, this is going to happen. Well, if that happens, then what happens next? This matters. So here's a practical example. High gas prices. That should cause people to drive less. Well, if people drive less, they go and buy more fuel-efficient cars. People then complain to politicians, and then politicians will create tax incentives for these fuel-efficient cars. This causes OPEC to also drill more, creating more oil and gas to be used, further lowering gas prices. The lowering of gas prices with more fuel-efficient cars would lead to a migration of people into the suburbs, where we end up actually driving more. Energy entrepreneurs would create innovation, and the one thing that the oil and gas industry knows is boom and bust cycles. Every event creates its own offspring and creates something that may be unforeseen. It requires us to have a wider imagination when it comes to understanding the future. What seems obvious today could not be true tomorrow due to some unforeseen circumstance. Events compound like money, and the central feature of compounding is it's never intuitive to how big something can grow from the beginning. Now, why is this meaningful for Bitcoin? Well, a lot of things have happened historically. If you've read Saifedean's book, The Bitcoin Standard, you get a very clear picture as to why and how money has evolved over time. I won't go into the details, but you can read the book and understand how money has changed from shells and beads to gold to paper, and now we have Bitcoin. You also need to understand that when it comes to Bitcoin, which a lot of folks consider gold 2.0 or the grandfather of blockchain or crypto, Bitcoin isn't necessarily a grandfather or even new. Blockchain technology and cryptographic innovation goes back to the 60s, 70s, and 80s. All Bitcoin did was bring proof of work mechanisms and a hard fixed supply of 21 million and an issuance schedule all into one. Bitcoin was launched in a decentralized way. It was ignored long enough to where it could not be coerced by a world leader or a government or country. And even when China has banned it for the 10th time, the hash rate and usage of Bitcoin mining continues to go up. Bitcoin cannot be censored and it cannot be stopped. We have to think through these things and look at what's happened historically. All of fiat currencies fail. Google it right now. Every fiat currency fail tends to happen within 25 years. We're lucky in America. Our currency has lived much longer than that. And that's because we pegged our money to gold. And when we left the gold standard in 1971, it left everyone else's currency pegged to ours, which then gives us the ability to print more money and devalue theirs, because when world trade happens within the confines of the dollar and we can create more dollars for ourselves, they become more poor. They have less purchasing power. Bitcoin solves for this. With a fixed cap of 21 million, now there's a hard supply that no central planner or entity can create more of. This gives everyone an equal playing field. It does not mean an equal outcome, but it means an equal playing field where they know there's this fixed supply, and now I, as an entrepreneur, have the ability to go out and earn and create value in society and earn an amount that is available to everyone. No one person can own the protocol, nor can they own the ability to create more out of thin air like we see with fiat currencies, which creates hyperinflation. I'll conclude with what seems obvious today may not be obvious tomorrow. Technologies do not unfold within 5 to 10 years. Oftentimes they can take 20 plus years. Bitcoin's about 15 years old. As we create further video discussing this, which I'm really excited to do covering this book, we'll dive into many more facets and things that are very interesting alongside this. So stay tuned and I'll add another video in the coming week. Thanks.